The republic which stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I've been away. Start the meeting. All right. 3.0 is roll call of all school board members, and we're all present today. We all blew in. 4.0 is to approve the agenda. I'll do a motion to approve. Need a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the agenda?
The only comment I wanted to make is if, and we can talk about it more when we get there, on 6.4 was added midday today. It's the update on the, I'm going to say it, the electronic subscriptions. And again, we can talk about it when we get there, or if it's approved or whatever here.
Any other questions or discussion items? All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
I was just going to say, are there any questions?
Oh,
I was just adding that was added. I wanted to make sure, but the curriculum pieces, the electronic subscriptions, for the most part, are very similar. There's a few things that have come off, minor things come off, minor additions. It's right in budget with what we have had the last few years. And like I say, I'm recommending to move on so that they can start renewing them. Some are right now, some might be September 1st, October, right in that ballpark. But it just, so if there are questions, we
yeah,
can
that's
answer.
in the consent agenda, so if you wanted to take a look quick. Everybody to the technology subscriptions. I think we talked briefly about it last time.
A little bit, yep. And we've paired things a little bit and shied and yeah.
Pulled from anybody else?
You do?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. 5.0, communication and reports. Start with an enrollment update.
Okay, if you look at the enrollment update, unfortunately, we are down 6 kids from last month. There's 4 at the high school, 2 seniors, a junior and a sophomore. 3 of them are 15 days out and we don't know where they're at. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it's never good to lose a kid, but it's not the first week of school, so we've had them. They're working on it. 1 did transfer to California, so that is a complete move. We've lost 2 in 3rd grade, up 1 in 2nd, and 1 in kindergarten. We're down. So total is 6. Like I say, that's where we're at.
Questions on enrollment? Okay. Finance update?
Carla's not here. If you look, I don't know if you want to look at the board report. For the most part, things, I mean, it's don't take it the wrong way. It's almost a broken record. We're ahead of where we've been, which is a good thing. Like I say, we're getting to that point where certain things are getting close to, being maxed out. A few things need to be shifted around, but I don't have much to highlight for you, really anything of major concern that hasn't been, the last couple months kind of highlighted. Food service seems to be coming around a little bit. And again, until final numbers are final, I think it looks a little better than it did probably 2 months, 3 months ago. And they'll start working on, well, they probably are working on cleaning the freezer and not, ordering certain things, but trying to get things down. And we do have some food service in the summer with ESY and stuff like that. So I don't have much unless there's questions.
Questions
No
on
question.
finance?
No.
Right. Go into administration and department head reports, and we'll start with you, Mr. Grover.
Okay, so I did print, they're nice, larger copies, a draft. The plan is to have it the first meeting in June. Admin went another run through it. It's going to be available for the admin or the district leadership team to look at. It's not nice. It's actually built that size. I'm not the most tech person or whatever. When we tried blowing it up, it didn't work real great. So, to shrink it and send it in a nice size it just doesn't work very well. That's why I printed it. They did have some good recommendations as far as getting some things like in chronological. So like in each category, if something's right now or something's ongoing, we put them in kind of in that order. Obviously, when this gets printed and displayed in places, it'll be like a 2-pager, in those framed pieces. And we can work on, we need a smaller version, we'll get it in that. But please look at it. If there's anything grammatical, again, I was working on it Friday and again this weekend. So again, I'm still open to looking at it. We've had a lot of great recommendations, but please look it over. If there are, I'm just going to be honest, it would be nice, getting it a few days ahead of time so we can work on the formatting and make it look, as good as possible. But that's the plan. So that's that.
We're looking to approve this in the June meeting.
June, unless there's a reason not to.
Yep.
Like I say, it's a living document, and if there's stuff you want changed, whatever, we just want to keep moving, Just a few reminders. Bus driver negotiation, which is Lynn, Amanda, and Josh, May 27th is at 11 o'clock is when we're scheduled for that first round. They're going to bring, some ideas. I'm going through and, working on some stuff, but we'll work through that process. Staffing for the most, we're getting closer. We're still short a preschool person, which is the main key right now.
Teacher, preschool teacher.
Yeah, preschool teacher. Yeah, paras, we're not even in the ballgame yet of, knowing what we're short or whatever. They'll start working on that. Without the updates, just so everyone's, you've probably seen the social study opening. The reason for that is we didn't get a tech person. And so we have a teacher that's going to go into that role, and we're in the process of filling then social studies. And again, whether that person takes the 2 sections of AVID or, some combination, it'll be a full-time position. Mr. Lohr left you a sheet on graduation, and I apologize a little bit, I'd asked, you only need 2 people. And I kind of went back a couple times going, why isn't the whole board where I came from? The whole board, I've been to several graduations, isn't the whole board? Well, the whole board is involved. It's just 2 present. So everyone else, I'm going to say, sits on stage and looks pretty handsome, whatever. If you can't be, things come up. You might have a relatives, just let us know so we don't have extra chairs sitting. But otherwise, so at the Civic Center, 6:45, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Hey, don't spoil it. Come on. So
She's
anyway,
a challenge.
um,
Do you have a seating chart, or we'll figure it out when we get there? All right.
Perfect.
other than that, I don't have anything right now. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet.
All right. You are up.
Says just join with computer ID or no? Okay, sure. It was on. Every time. Okay, every time. All right, so. Good evening. It is time for our American Indian Education Aid application to be turned into the state, and it was approved by our parent committee. And that means that it then comes to the school board for a signature and to the superintendent, and then we submit it to the state for their approval. To get approval, we have to make 6 goals and tell how we are going to achieve those goals. Our first goal is that 100% of American Indian students will be prepared for post-secondary success. We are going to continue our graduate portfolio monitoring system, college visits, mentorship with UND. We help with FAFSA and scholarship application support and cultural integration with counseling services. Our second goal is 100% of teachers and staff will be trained in Native American best practices. This will happen through ongoing professional development, co-teaching, mentoring, and modeling with me, partnerships with American Indian consultants, and integration of all Indigenous materials into all classrooms across the district. Not all of the stuff will be that, but we will have them in all classrooms. 100% of teachers will utilize the cultural resources in their instruction. So they will get them through me. This will make sure that the standards are all met. Our monthly meetings, we talk about this with the parents, making sure that we're getting all of the curriculum that we need to meet the standards. Our fourth goal is we want to increase our family participation. It was at about 42% this year, and we want to see that go up to 46%. We do a monthly cultural event, including our beading and our star quilting and our ribbon skirts. We have powwows, including the all-school powwow that we had. Let's see, we also, we teach about the 7 grandfathers. That helps with our SEL teachings. Goal 5, 100% of American Indian students and families will learn cultural teachings, including our Ojibwe and Dakota language skills. So we have, like I said, these are the sampling of the activities that we do every month. We have something every month, and our American Indian families get access to Ojibwe learning exercises for their language skills. Goal 6, we are going to enhance, not replace the state and federal funding with this grant. That's important as well. So our parent committee approved. It looks really similar to what we did this year. We were really happy with how all the events went, and we just want to help that grow and continue.
Can you repeat what you said about the funding?
The funding, so this grant, we are going to enhance what the school does, what we already get. We're not replacing any other title funding. Correct? Is that how you would?
No, this is how I'd say it. So the American Indian Education Aid is strictly for American Indian programming.
Mhm.
And this is state aid that we get in addition for each student is how it works. So that's how we utilize these funds to build on. The district does put in money on
Sure.
top of that, is I think what you meant, right?
Yes, yes.
And then we do also get federal dollars in Title V.
6.
Six.
In
Yes.
Title VI as
So
well.
we are not allowed to use these funds for anything besides what has been approved by the parent committee. We say what, you know, they tell us what we want or what they want us to do. We make it happen, and we use the funds for that.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other piece is, you know, others than Native Americans can participate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's based around their culture, but like we do school-wide powwow, that's everyone,
Yep.
you know, so.
And that just helps with the
Correct.
educational piece and the standards that are.
And you do go into the classrooms
Yeah.
as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How many times do you go into, or how many times do you try to get into every classroom? In a
Oh,
year, I'd say.
well, depending on how difficult the time of year is, like May,
Yep.
every few months at least. Mhm.
Yep.
But it was probably every other month.
And then we enhance that with Ricky White as
Mhm.
well.
Yep.
Provided all those cultural teachings as well in the school district.
Yep. I got to see one of those
Mhm.
lessons. It was pretty cool.
But like I said, our families, we do something at least once a month.
The school-wide powwow, is that in school, so all the kids get to
Mhm.
come see it? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And part of how American Indian education has changed in the last couple of years for sure, Matt, is that now it is for all.
Sure.
It's
Mhm.
not just
Yep.
like we're going to hire a tutor for the American Indian
Yep.
students anymore. It is education for all.
Yep.
Okay,
To build that cultural awareness.
sure.
Yeah, the in-school powwow is really, really neat. And the drum group, they have some really, really cool ideas for next year that we're
Okay.
working on. So to make it even bigger and better, and so it's really, really
Cool.
cool. We're proud of it. Any
Any
questions?
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, This is usually the principal meeting where we get the principal updates, but we're gonna save those for June because not much has changed between April and May. So then in June, we'll get the end of the year updates. Any committee reports?
Not, I mean, we have some stuff coming up and
All right, 6.0 is to approve the consent agenda. I'll move to approve the consent agenda as attached.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion or want anything pulled from the consent?
I have a question on the technology subscription. So I did a little research, and their, Fastbridge does offer the behavioral assessments and tracking, like Panorama does. So I was wondering if that was ever looked into as combining them so that we can maybe get rid of one and just having Fastbridge do all of it?
but Fastbridge and Panorama is really I'm gonna call it a warehouse,
Yeah.
which Fastbridge is not. Like, we can't put our attendance data or behavior data into Fastbridge.
It has a thing, I screenshotted it earlier, but it has almost all the same as Panorama. It just has, it's more educational focused than it is. There was literally a graph.
I mean, I would love to not spend the
Yeah.
20,000+, but I am not aware, and Soraya can speak more to it, that the two can do the same. I mean, there are pieces, like there might be a mental health assessment that both have or something like that.
So there is, that's another subscription fee
Mhm.
other than what we're paying currently.
Yep.
And I don't,
Papers or whatever.
I don't know, Amanda, that we're gonna spend or save a lot of money by using their EduClimber. And we've heard there's been a lot of issues with that as well, getting the data in
Okay.
to their warehouse. And working with the Northwest Service Co-op as we have been.
Mhm.
Another thing that they said is the Panorama survey that we have is really, it's the best that's out there. So she said, I wouldn't switch to that survey. They're not getting the data out that they want, schools.
In Synergy is another one we're looking at. We have Synergy as our data, our student man.
Mhm.
We're exploring that because Panorama has increased a
It has
fair number,
increased,
but
just because it has a good survey.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what it says because my kids have never.
And
taken
there's
it, but-
survey things in there too, Amanda, we're not using. There's family surveys we could be utilizing in there that are really good, that would give us some really good information. There's also we use the student surveys, but there's also staff surveys that help us know if what we're doing is effective
Mhm.
with staff as well and where we want to see growth. So it's been a good tool and we're starting to see usage. I just met with them and they're pulling our usage, so I could report back to you on that as well. But we have seen an increase in usage.
and the one thing we're not doing is we're not doing a 3-year contract with
So it's not really
Panorama.
if we were- I
It-
thought I
it-
saw
It's,
something about that, that's what
it's
Yeah.
gonna be a 1 year, it's what, 22,000, I forget what it is. It's
Yeah.
not cheap, but
Not cheap, but
because we are looking at other things and you never know. I mean,
Yeah, it's almost $26,000 for
26,
1
yeah.
year. And if we're only having that for surveys and because it tracks behavior, is there something else that's?
But you'd have to
Either
buy a different
equivalent.
module.
it houses everything.
So,
yeah,
Right.
Step into a parent meeting, you can find absences, late, tardies, all of that, plus every note that every teacher has access to that. And then you draw in some of that, I mean, the survey is, yes, that helps, but it helps us gather.
all the data.
We dump all our interventions into Panorama. And so we're able to see everything on every kid.
If it's utilized.
What's that?
Well, because the usage you said isn't.
The
necess-
usage,
like,
the
it's
M-
increasing, so that
Yep.
not necessarily being utilized to its potential.
So the MTSS teams use them all the time. They use that data all the time. So as a MTSS team sits down, or if a teacher's coming in, all their data on their student is in there. So we can look at their behavioral, their academic, their absences, any discipline, all of it's there, the whole record. So it's encompassing all of that information. That's why it's called a warehouse, and then it puts it into graphs and charts with us. And we're using how to use it still. I mean, the other piece of it is for SEL components, it has a whole curriculum that they can put in whatever, let's say my classroom, cultural awareness, let's pretend that was one thing that came up as a shortage or or self-awareness came up as a shortage. It'll give them a bunch of activities that they can use right in their classrooms. They don't have to hunt and pack and try and find. So we've really tried to push that this year as well. And I think it's been really nice for the MTSS teams because they can look at that and there's actually interventions and things that they can pull right from there that it suggests. And it has an AI component that's coming where they can, you can type in, I would like interventions for so-and-so, for Saray Driscoll, and in reading. And now it's giving us like it would give us a half page on what that looks like. Now, there might be an additional fee, but Jill and I are looking into it because we feel that that's something that should just come with a subscription because AI is everywhere. So they are ramping things up in there as well.
Thank you.
I mean, I think it's a good question and to be fiscally responsible to look at different softwares like that. I think we're a little bit, I mean, we're at the finish line here, right? So maybe for next year, we
Mhm.
could have different,
Well, and we were looking earlier,
have
like I
been
said,
looking.
synergy was considered and, you know, there's.
We have
pros-
been looking,
Yeah.
for sure.
okay. Any other questions or discussion on anything in the consent agenda?
Mm-mm.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.0 citizens speak. Did you have any? Okay. 8.0, moving on to district business. 8.1 is to approve the K-12 science curriculum purchase for, what's VY?
It's FY, sorry,
Oh.
fiscal year, sorry.
Fiscal year 26.
Good catch.
Of $172,487.19 with ongoing costs for another 5 years totaling $293,003.39 as presented and attached in board book.
I'll make a move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on this item?
So a couple things, just so you're aware, these curriculums came from the committees, you know,
Mhm.
elementary through, there's some stuff that's been pared down. I had mentioned to you, we were, you know, we were 370 or something like that total. Some of the things that have come out, there've been a few things pulled. There's no hard copies, and when I say hard copies, whether they're, no paper copies, you know, a lot of them, several of the classes wanted classroom sets, and I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I mean, if the board feels differently, we could surely go back and it's probably about 30,000. They're about $40 a piece for the paper copy. But that was one place, we were more, I'm gonna say the admin team, more interested in, and a lot of it's coming from me to try and get the number down. I'm just being honest, of looking, keeping the manipulatives, some of those other things instead of having the digital and paper copy. They're good. The staff has stepped up instead of just ordering the refill kits to save some money. We're gonna, you know, purchase separately, take a little more time and effort, see exactly what's being used. Cause I'll be honest, even with when I bought math stuff, sometimes you used half of it. And so let's make sure. So that's where that number's come down. There've been a few things reduced, pulled down. There's only one group and it was in the high school. If you look, there's one class that has a paper or hard copy because it's a class of like 25 kids or whatever, and it was 2,000 a year for the digital copy. It was more economical just to buy the hard copy or whatever you know, and have it. But the rest are all online.
Are you done, Kevin?
Yeah, yep.
So Amanda and I had some discussions, just shortly prior to this meeting. And I called Kevin to talk about it briefly and, we, as board members, I guess, I think we both feel like we would like a chance to review the curriculum. I understand we have a committee that, and I, it's not that we don't have trust in the committee, it's just, we feel like it's our job as a board member to review some of these things. We talked about potentially tabling this or asking to table it to just have a chance to review it. I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for Amanda. I don't feel like this is the right time to insert myself into this discussion. I would like to have a conversation about moving forward, having board representation on these committees. to choose curriculum?
Yeah, and to go along with that, I mean, no disrespect for everyone who worked and put all their time and effort into it, but I always have learned trust but verify. I like to do my due diligence. I like to research it. I like to be able to see what it entails, what it doesn't entail. And when I went and to look at all this, there's like hundreds of pages to look through, and I can see where all the hard work came from, but to be able to do it over one weekend is not adequate. And to be a board member and say, yes, this is what, and have confidence to be able to look at myself in the mirror, it's hard to be able to do that when you don't have the opportunity to
The-
learn or to research or do anything. It's no disrespect. I mean, it's just trust but verify.
And it's kind of, and I just want to throw it out so that Matt and I's conversation a little bit, the piece I struggle, and again, I respect the group, as I mentioned to Matt, I did not go through and participate in every review cycle. They did have multiple copies of different, things and made choices. But I go back to, there's governance and then there's management. And that's where I struggle with, I mean, the board has a final say on everything, so to speak. But where do you draw that line? I mean, everything, you could want to be involved in technically. And I guess that's where I go. I think the English department should be picking the English out. The science should be picking the science. And then, like I say, it's not to say, I mean, there's people that
Yeah.
have a lot of knowledge up here, and expertise in different things, but where do where do you draw that line then? If we're gonna meet and talk about like I say, you are the overseers and you have to approve here, so you have the right to say no, yay, nay, whatever, but it's tough to,
And it's
know.
not trying to micromanage,
Well.
it's just trying to know what I'm voting for and what I'm not voting
no,
for.
I understand that, but like I said,
The next meeting, have some people on the committee just present their process, why this was selected.
I think that's probably an appropriate way to go in the future, because like when we added OG, they came and gave us a big, spiel.
Yeah.
On OG, and maybe that's like, hey, this is the curriculum we're going to, that we're bringing forth. Here it is, here's, and why.
Yeah,
I
why
think
others
that's
weren't
probably-
chosen.
and that could be,
Yeah.
it could definitely be
'Cause
arranged.
I'm not gonna go to a science curriculum committee and have any worthwhile in,
Yeah,
because I am not a science teacher and I don't wanna be.
and I don't think it's
No,
for
I,
of
no,
going.
seriously, but
Yeah.
I think if you get the lowdown of what they're picking and why,
Yeah.
I think the why behind it is the major.
And it's not the participation, I don't think, in the committee. It's the learning and listening. Like for the leadership committee, I don't really participate. I listen and I learn.
Sure.
That is, I don't really participate. And I think the same thing with the curriculum. Just to listen and learn and to see the process and to understand so that it's a better informed decision by the board.
But you would get that from them presenting to you, here's the curriculum we want,
Yeah.
and why.
In theory, yeah.
And that's how I feel too, Lynn. I don't want anything to do with choosing the curriculum. It's just a matter of, I think the people, if I had to poll the people that wanted me on the school board, I think they would tell me, we want you to know what's in the curriculum that we're choosing. And however, I hate to just read it after the long process of it being chosen and then say, here it is. And then what if I just find something there to say, I don't like what's in there?
But there's probably gonna be something, just to be fair, in every curriculum.
I understand that. There, yep. And,
And the other piece that
It's-
becomes challenging is like on early outs, they might meet. Yeah, I mean, 4 different buildings of, or different times that it's not where that whole committee came together
Yeah.
and sat in this room, each
But yeah,
time.
yeah, but it's almost, yeah, that's,
Well, I'm just saying, if you're gonna try and be actually on a committee, it's not just a single, each
Yeah.
building had their group.
you would have
Oh.
a chance though to at least listen and learn.
But you have a chance to go to any of that at any time. You can.
When
go
we
there.
know what they are,
Yeah.
yeah. Or when they are, yeah.
yeah, I mean, if it's something where, if, I don't know how the committee would feel about coming to present
Oh.
what they are proposing.
I think it can be a expectation if that's what we want
I
going
think we
forward,
should do it
that,
moving forward. I don't
Yeah.
know. because
I
they're
think right
already
now is the wrong time to insert,
Say again.
yeah, I agree. I think right now
Right
is the wrong time to insert the board into the science curriculum.
Right, because they gotta
Cause
order
it's
it.
already, yeah, it's here and.
Well,
ready.
and yes,
They
picked
gotta
and
order
we
it.
gotta order it. But I think moving forward, yeah.
yeah, no, it definitely can be arranged.
Okay, and
I
then,
think we should do that.
Yeah.
and then moving forward, if we are given enough time to actually put some due diligence into, if I wanted to go and review the curriculum myself. Instead of, instead of having to vote on it, the meeting that they presented.
Oh,
What was that?
Moving
Like
forward,
they
yeah.
can present and we could.
Present and then
And
we
then vote the next
Yeah,
time,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, have time instead of getting it on a Thursday and then vote for it on a Monday, or, you know, just preparation time,
get-
research time.
I guess, here's my comment. I said, do you see us as a board ever not approving that curriculum after it's been already vetted? We have enough people that we've hired in these positions that I trust, and I trust to do their job.
Yeah.
And so if they're gonna come here and present the curriculum, which if that's the way we wanna go, that's the way we wanna go. But they spend hours on this thing, absolutely hours on that thing. And why should 6 of us decide that that's not good enough for our kids?
And I guess that was my point, like, if I go to one of those meetings,
Correct.
And what's the purpose
am
of
I
it
gonna-
having come to the board for approval then if we're not gonna?
To understand.
We
Yeah,
trust the
but-
people that we have in place to make those decisions for
I
our
don't think it
kids.
has to do with trust. I mean, I trust my husband, but I don't sit there and, I don't know, I just.
Trusting your husband is not trusting the
But even
administration. That's-
teachers, it's irrelevant. The trust is irrelevant. I still want to do my
I
own
disagree.
due diligence and
I disagree with that.
stuff.
You have to have trust in the people, the hundreds of people who are running this.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't trust them. I'm
Then why
saying
are
I
we gonna
still
have them come
want
in
to
front of
vote on
us?
something, I wanna have all the information
We're not
relevant to
gonna
vote.
bicker about the.
Yeah.
I think it's
description of
nice to
trust.
learn a little bit more about it, just so that we do have an understanding, but I
Yeah, I'm
don't think.
fine
That's
with
all I'm
bringing it
saying.
to the board.
Yeah,
For-
I think that's nice to have a presentation to hear about it and things like that, but again, putting these committees in place to make these decisions and to have them and use their expertise and their knowledge and their experience to bring forth what they think is gonna be best. And if if I'm honest, I'm not gonna spend hours reading over each one of these.
Going forward,
Thanks.
we'll plan to have a presentation, say in April, you know, whether it's first, second meeting, and then sometime in May, you know,
It's just-
approve it. And that's very doable. Where you go from there, I think we can see down the road.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, so we're gonna vote on approving the science curriculum purchase for fiscal year 26. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't know how it goes.
Motion carries 5-1. Okay, payment of claims and accounts.
I make the motion to approve the payment of K-12 bills 129393 through 129463 and electronic fund transfers in the amount of $1,194,814.66.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're gonna take a
Yep,
3-minute
just
break
get them in and.
and get our facility assessment proposal presentation people, say that 10 times fast, in here. Oh, yeah, it's in person. Any audience members are not
Not interested.
not wanting to stay. 0-0.
So I'm gonna share the screen link with you. You can zoom in. And then you're gonna start here for it. And then I'll present that to you. Whoever's gonna present it. I'll just do whatever. Third off, if I spell that, SCOLT. SC? SC.
That'd be the win.
OLT.
Hi. Good, how are you? Matt Hicksley.
Oh.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Jason.
Just a couple.
Can I say one thing really quick? Okay. I just wanted to mention and remind you all that our American Indian graduation ceremony is this Saturday at the middle school from 1 to 3 p.m. So
Middle school, you said?
middle school, yeah.
Middle school, yeah.
Yep. So come eat, celebrate. It's always a great time. It's really a, sorry, what was that? I was gonna say, there's food. Our graduation ceremony powwow is this Saturday from 1 to 3. I just wanted to remind you again. It's at the middle school. It's wonderful. It's very casual. You don't have to come and sit. No one's gonna notice if you have to run out fast. So if you can, make sure you come. It's really a good time. Thank you.
Yeah, cause, who's in, yeah, yeah, there you go. Yep.
Okay. You let me know when you're ready and then we'll just do a. Just give him just a second here to.
It'll be fun. I know, I just Same exact scenario. Like I'm just like.
If someone wanted to stop down and grab one, look at it, and they would take it, just, we don't want it to, you know, not put out in a newspaper or anything like that.
And it's gonna be cold, like I don't want it to be like this, but I don't want it to be cold. I don't want it to be sticky and then raining. I'm like, why did that? I'm waiting till Memorial. I'm waiting till Memorial. I was gonna plan this weekend and I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm gonna wait. No, I haven't even pressure washed my house yet because the wind does not stop. 90 and. Yeah, did you see the track meet already got canceled for tomorrow? Track meet, the middle school
Why?
track meet's canceled for
For
tomorrow.
what reason?
Wind, heat, excessive heat
Well, it's-
and air quality, actually.
it's-
Air quality's
It's,
garbage.
it's probably more so because this valley, they've been getting out. Yeah, they've been getting, and tomorrow and all week, yeah. They don't have AC.
If you look out
over
there,
there.
the air quality is terrible. You don't really want your kids out there. breathing all
No.
of it. So, yeah, makes sense.
So there's a track meet right now happening. It's in Roseau.
It's like. Yeah.
It's not good for farmers. It's coming.
Any other time, if you have 90 in the middle of, in the beginning of May, we would have had a big storm out this weekend and we did. I was like, wait for it. I was like, come on.
Because it's coming up this
There's no
direction. It's,
moisture.
there's no coming down from the north at the same time.
Snow and there's no moisture, it's so dry.
Usually it pulls it up from the Gulf and it didn't get that far.
Is Rosa clear out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he let her guy too.
Roseau, yeah, it's probably just as bad up there.
Is it working, Jason, or? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I'm with you, yeah.
What do you, I mean, like it's May, it's either, it's gonna be 90 or it's gonna be 40. More likely. It's always windy and rainy.
Oh, could you imagine if it was 90 degrees on graduation day, what that would be like in there?
They would be painting, they pass them.
Lynn, do you want me to start to, okay.
It's always rainy and windy. It's the wind and stuff, cause mine is just saying.
Well, board, thanks for the quick pause. In front of us, we have ICS, which is a company that has worked with the district in various capacities. I'm going to say over the years. I can't tell you everything, but Blair and Jason are here. They'll do some intros, I'm sure, and give you a little more info and present. And by all means, the understanding, be open to asking questions, you know, as the process goes on. And welcome. Thank you for coming and speaking and presenting, and have at her.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm gonna kind of screw with your process a little bit as we get going, but to kick us off, my name is Jason Splett. I am the Business Development Director with ICS. I've been with the company for about 11 years now, all focused on working with Northern Minnesota K-12 schools. So I had the pleasure, as Mr. Grover mentioned earlier, of working with you back in 2021. I think Lindsay, you might have been the only one on the board at that time.
I think I was
Were you?
there. I was probably hiding.
Oh, gotcha. Prior to,
No, 22.
prior to that, I was facility director at Park Rapids Schools. And before that, I was a site superintendent and project manager working on K-12 schools. So I've spent my career working with school districts in Minnesota on construction projects and facility improvements. So
Hi, I'm Blair Stoltman. I've been with ICS just over a year. I spent my early part of my career as an engineer and project manager in manufacturing for about 10 years. And then I transitioned to the construction side probably for the last 10, 12 years. I've been in your shoes before. I've served as a school board member in Ada Borup West for about 8 years, and the last 4 as a chair. I had the pleasure of actually working on probably one of the first projects Jason was on in 2014. It was successful, so it's been fun this last year, kind of getting to see the intertwinings and workings of ICS from sitting on this side of the table rather than your side. So, agenda, we're gonna kind of go through about 8 items here today, and as we go through, if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand, speak up. We'll just be conversational. So we're gonna jump through our background of ICS and our team. We're gonna ask some questions that are important to East Grand Forks. What is important to you? We'll go through our approach. It's a 5-phase approach. We'll look at team structure. We have some example timelines. We'll talk a little cost, and then why choose ICS, and then Q&A at the end or during. Little background on ICS. ICS has been working since 2006 with school districts and or clients to bring innovative solutions for facilities. We look at funding solution, that's our expertise, funding solutions, planning, construction, and this overall ongoing operations. And our client needs, and we help that client plan, build, and operate, kind of our three-prong saying. We have roughly about 110 employees spanned across 9 offices. 6 of those offices are in the Minnesota area. You know, Minneapolis, Mankato, Sauk Rapids, Brainerd, and Duluth, Park Rapids, which is our closest to here. We have a few other offices in Fargo and Sioux Falls as well, and we have a satellite in Pennsylvania, actually.
and by far, our biggest office is Park Rapids. So we've built a whole team that is dedicated to northern and northwest Minnesota that specializes in school construction projects. So with that, before we get going into more about us, I always like to kind of get a feel for the district and what are some of the things that are important to you folks. So in front of you, I put sticky notes. If you could, we're going to start out with what are the positive things or what are the great things happening in East Grand Forks schools? And I apologize, I'm gonna get up from the mic and just grab them and just read them off as we go through this. We're just gonna spend a couple minutes going through this. So what are the great things happening at East Grand Forks schools? And we'll talk a little bit about this, later on in the process, but this is part of our listening sessions. So it really, we do this with staff, community, and it really helps to paint a good picture for the district. So you could write them and I'll just, yep, go ahead. Staff, students, families, communities. Student activities and engagement. Student growth and involvement. Matt, growth politically and academically. Great teachers, wonderful staff, pride in our school. Diverse offerings, steady enrollment, growth in enrollment. Activities and staff. Family support and involvement. So, perfect, thank you for that. You want to hit the button? Next, we're going to talk, or I'm asking, what are the biggest challenges that are facing East Grand Forks schools today? Free pay space. Budget, space, classrooms.
Yeah, I'm like,
Finances, space. Keeping up with demands. Slide, student behavior, staff retention.
Pretty similar to what's been said.
Financial planning and budget constraints, space, and financial uncertainty in school size.
Oh, yeah, that's another big one.
Yeah.
Teacher shortage.
teacher shortage,
Okay.
that's fine.
Well, thanks. That just helps us kind of get kicked off through the process and kind of understand some of what you folks are dealing with on a daily basis. And again, this is something that we tend to do with we'll do the school board through the full sessions, do staff, do community, just to get a good painted picture of what is the true challenges for East Grand Forks. And, you know, as you've seen here, I mean, this goes far beyond facilities, right? This kind of paints that nice picture for you as a board on what are your challenges that everybody else sees that they're dealing with. So. When it comes to facility planning, ICS is not just a construction firm. We are planning, we are well-rounded. And I think it's really important that as the district goes through this process, that they find somebody that is a good partner for them through the planning process. So as we talked about, I was a former facility director. Blair was a former board member. So we've been in K-12 schools, we've been in your shoes. We've tried to figure out funding solutions. We have retired educators on staff. We do have a whole robust team of CM experts. We partner with architects and engineers. We're not an architect or an engineering firm. We like to have the client pick who the partner is that they want to work with that is the most convenient for them and is the best fit for you folks. We talked about former educators, communications, community engagement. Just went through this exercise. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. Energy. Energy is a big piece of our world today. And are we efficient in our buildings? And how can we be more efficient to save some of that funding that you guys get now? How do we put more of that funding into the classrooms versus going up that stack of our boilers? And then facility assessment experts, whole team that is just dedicated to assessing facilities throughout Minnesota. So.
Now we'll shift over to our 5-phase approach. This kind of gives a big screenshot of what we're gonna go through over the next handful of slides. You'll see, if you look at the top bar, the number one integral part of it is communication, right? It's communication of findings, the process, the recommendations, all the way through to the implementation and finalization of your project. It's holding us accountable, all partnerships that even Jason mentioned between the school district and ICS, but also our partners that we use inherently throughout the process. So going through it, we have 5 phases. So phase 1, assessment, right? We're talking, Jason mentioned assessment. We're gonna go through the facilities, the demographics, the educational adequacy, the guidelines from MDE, those type of things. So that's kind of phase 1. And we move over to solutioning. So this is all a process. We'll go through the timeline in further slides, but phase 2 is kind of that solutioning, financial solutions, project scope solutions, what is needed that fits all those groupings. Then we get to the decision process, right? We're working towards a board approval. We're getting that fine feedback from community, from the district, from the school board, all those parties that are important to make that final decision for the board. And then if that pertains to a referendum, that would be phase 4, which you start your election campaign and your phase 4 communications. And then finalization would be phase 5, which is implementation of your project. So we'll jump right into phase 1. I mean, we're talking stakeholder engagements. We're looking at education. We're looking at those listening sessions, those thought exchange that we use as a tool, those surveys to gather information from the key stakeholders, the school board, the administration teams, staff, the students, the civic groups that we have in the community, other business groups, and actually all of the public that'll be invited to come to those, right? To have a chance to speak. What kind of questions are we asking? What are the positives of the school? Kind of similar we just kind of did. What are the challenges? What do they see as challenges? The mission statements, what needs what do they think the school needs? Advice for you as school board members or administration, or expectations of us. How do they want to be communicated with, either if it's during the process or what kind of communications they use, so we can get to everybody along the way. And then even talking to students, even though they might not see the benefits or maybe a different age, they can maybe their siblings can enjoy those type of things, you know, that the school brought later after they graduated or got their diploma. So this starts to build that coalition and the support between community and the internal district staff, so we can come forward and find a long range plan. And there's some other diagrams up there that we kind of look at stakeholders from the community versus internal to see where those paths cross. You know what I mean?
What I want to highlight there is advice. So we asked school board, we asked staff community, what advice do you have for the school board as you go through this process? And we asked you folks, what are your expectations of going through this process? Obviously, you can't give yourselves advice, but trying to get that well-rounded, perspective from community and your stakeholders.
So continuing on with this, with phase 1, there's some diagrams up there. First off, we kind of used a few tools. One is called a demographic analysis. So we kind of started one here for East Grand Forks up there. You can see this was done here recently through our Applied Insights partner that just kind of shows a lot of information in regards to how many students are within the district, how many are within the district going to enrolled here, open enrollees and others. But there's a lot of information with birth rates and to delve into the early childhood all the way through K-12 to kind of see where your district lies as far as, are we growing? Are we maintaining our current enrollments?
I think on that, one big thing is, over the last 10 years, your district total students that live within the district has grown 17%, right? So you got more kids living here now than you ever did. Your enrollment has maintained relatively flat over that entire 10-year period. And you have that green bar being the private schools that has slowly ticked up over time. Everybody else kind of down at the bottom is a little bit non-exist. They're not a big player. You have the open enrollment out, and then you have the homeschool kids. So
Then we have what we call an educational adequacy analysis. It's kind of taking, it's 18 categories through the MDE guidelines, and we just go through each of your facilities and all 18 categories, and kind of, the example up there is just a school, it was Park Rapids, that has multiple facilities as well. Green is adequate, yellow is questionably adequate, I think the word is. So some of the things qualify, some don't. It's regarding square footages and those type of things. And then red, of course, is inadequate. We'll jump to the next slide where Jason will kind of walk through the facility assessment and capacity analysis.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously, one of the big things that you folks kind of started this process through was facility assessment. And to me, one of the most important things that we can do today is set ourselves up for the future, right? I know your facility director is up there in age. At some point, he's going to be leaving your district. I don't know when, but how do we capture everything out of his head and get it down so that you can transition on to that next generation of leader within your district? And through my work at Park Rapids, that was one of the biggest things that I came into, was that information wasn't there. I was starting from scratch. So how do we take a step back and get everything out of his head and get it onto paper so we make that transition that much simpler? You can see up there, the top left picture is just roof maps. How old are our roofs? How do we transition that over? How do we prepare for those roofs? Our LTFM funding is only so great, right? So we need to start saving today for those roofs that we just replaced in 22. Now, that's a big dollar expense. How do we budget for that into the future? Next picture to the right is HVAC units. That particular school, all the HVAC equipment was installed in 1988 and had not been upgraded. Keep moving to the right, the B shell, just an example of the information. You got color codes, same thing as kind of the EDAD, red, green, yellow, right? Good, questionable stuff. And everything's got a age and what is the life expectancy remaining. So the final bar chart on the bottom is just looking at a facility and what are the needs by LTFM finance code. So I know I've worked with Ron for several years, Ron, Carla, on just helping to put together that LTFM plan at the end of the fiscal year, going into July, the next fiscal year. Now, that was Ron bringing the projects and us kind of putting it together. It wasn't doing the big deep dive of the facilities like we're talking about here to really go out and capture all that information and actually build that LTFM plan into the future. Questions? No? Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll send it to Kevin and he can get that out tonight. Yep. So once we have kind of all those puzzle pieces, you got a lot of data that the district can start looking at to make some decisions based upon, right? You know how many kids you're gonna have to the future by doing a demographic study. We got our listening session results. We know what our educational deficiencies are just based on the MDE guidelines. And then we have the facility assessment. So kind of got all those puzzle pieces to start making some decisions. So as we look at diving into some of the solutions, it's really a three-legged stool, right? Because there's ICS, there's the district, and there's Ehlers with some of the financial solutions. So it really becomes a partnership to work together on changing or enhancing the education and the delivery of East Grand Forks schools.
Continue on with that. So after the phase one, where we have some project scope and options to address some of those facility needs, we go through what we call a solutioning processing. So we're starting with, I have a concept below. If you start in the bottom right, it's a concept of what we're gonna do at a particular school. This happens to be Badger. We're working with renovations in those green areas first. And then we have some HVAC stuff showing on the left side of it. where we're coming up with costing. The top right picture is kind of our, what we call is our summary of the financials, right? So we can present that, here is an option. And going forward, you might have multiple X amount of options, 1A, 1B, to try to finalize and start that solutioning process, to have good discussions amongst the board and amongst all the other groups. So you provide those options we get, and then we start to narrow down in the process and the scope. Also, so we got budgeting. We're also looking at what are those effects on the budget? If it's an addition per se, what are we looking at a cost analysis for? Maybe it's extra help and maintenance. Maybe it's, those HVAC, the energy and utility costs and those things. So we're planning not only that of an addition or renovation, but we're also have the effects on the plan for the existing facilities while that happens. What benefits does it provide? There's some bar graphs. We'll have some studies done through those listening sessions to see what effects, does it improve education? And then we'll have the timeline. We'll work with Ellers. That's our, other partner. We'll provide those financials for each respective option in those solutioning options, along with the district. So that's kind of your three-legged stool within the solutioning. I don't know if we've been through before, this is available funding solutions that a school district has available to get financing for certain things. So in the green, these are the LTFM, performance contract, and general fund. They don't have any direct impacts on taxes. You have the board authority, but those are not direct tax impacts to residents. But then when you move forward on the yellow, if you look at abatement, health and safety IAQ, and then your lease levy bonds, you have board authority, but it's a direct impact that the taxpayer will see. And lastly is bond referendum. Of course, that's voter approved, where you'd go to the voters and it would have a direct impact on your taxes, on your voters.
2021, the funding solution there was LTFM, LTF indoor air quality, and abatement bonds, if I remember correctly, for the parking lots. So decision process. Before you as a board make any decisions, we always like to go back out to the community and get feedback, right? We ask them for feedback initially. We've got all their sticky notes, etc. Now we've got all our puzzle pieces. Now, before we're to make a decision, we're going to go out and make sure that, we're going to test our different concepts. We're going to listen to the community. We're going to tweak and refine the plan before either board approving or going towards that referendum. Now, we typically do that a couple of different ways. One is community meetings, right? Ice cream socials, however we can actually get somebody into the school. I think that's getting harder and harder today, is getting them in for open meetings. So we also use a tool called Thought Exchange. Blair mentioned it earlier. It's an online survey tool, kind of on steroids. You can ask nice open-ended questions, and you can get some really quantitative data back from the community, a little bit more detailed than just a general survey. Phase 4, election process. So again, that's assuming that anything that the board wants to do or that identifies needs to go towards a referendum. I'm not saying that that's the solution that folks need, but want to walk you through our process of it. So Sanford voter profile on the right, district has, I believe I wrote it down before, I had about 7,900 voters, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I can't read it, but you got a big pool to visit with and talk to and kind of gain some support of. So, obviously those folks need to have a lot of faith and trust in your school board. We need to make sure that we do get out and get that community input, make sure that communications are out there and accessible. We'll walk through our microsite here in a minute. Got to understand the value, right? How are we going to impact education through anything that the board does facility related? Avoid focusing on debating taxes, right? I think that's out there enough in our world where, we need to focus on what is the educational impact of anything. School board and teachers need to be visible through any process. And we need to respond to questions within 24 hours from our community members. Finally, got a vote yes committee that's out there getting enough information back to the school board about what's happening out in the community. Referendum timeframes. So, there's 5 timeframes that a school can run a referendum. February, the 5-year success rate is 67%, April 64%, May 30%, August 57%, and then November is in that low to mid 60s as far as success rates. So, if the districts running an operating referendum can only do it in November as well. So, I think that's just some good statistics to look at. When we look at May and August, May is obviously not, in our opinion, a good time, not only because of that, but, people are thinking about summer. Their mind's not on what's happening in the school. August, they're in summer mode, right? We're not coming back for, another month. We're out in La La Land still, so. Last piece of it is just district communications. So when we take customer through a referendum process, we really strive for the microsite for accessible information. Everything's on there. If we get a question from the community, that question automatically goes onto the FAQs on the website. Respond to every single question and make sure it's out there in the public. District newsletters and emails, brochures and fast fact sheet, those are the 2 on the bottom right. Social media obviously is a big part of communications in today's world. In-person meetings, let's try to get people in so they can actually ask questions and not sit on social media. Media stories and more. So, that's the gist of our package as we're looking at putting this together. Darn it, I just had a thought and I lost it, so apologize. Oh, the other thing through the listening session process is how do you want to be communicated? That tells us a lot, right? Is it newspaper? Is it mailings? How do your residents really want to be communicated with so that we can reach them and reach them effectively? I think we've seen a good shift in the different ways over the last 5 years, even since COVID. I think it was newspaper, it switched to social media, and now I think it's coming back around to newspaper and mailings. So.
Phase 5, if we're successful at a referendum or go forward with a board approved project, the org chart kind of shows is that ICS is below the district, right? We're an advocate for you. We're working for the district. But as a program manager, ICS would follow, be above the engineering, the architecture, the commissioning, all the construction management. We'd be underneath that umbrella. And we'd be working with the district, and then we'd go forward with low bid contracts. We have an opportunity to do source well, best value engineering. So that's kind of how the hierarchy would be if we went forward, and that's the project that we would go for.
What I like about that is architects, engineers are all underneath us, right? So it's one throat to choke in the end. There's not the finger pointing of it's the architect, the construction manager, et cetera. You have one entity that's looking out for you and your best interest as your owner's advocate. So.
And then like we had talked about, this team would be our hierarchy, basically all of them out of Park Rapids office. We have Jason and myself, and then we have our communication specialist, Rap, which he has a team of communicators that would work with our ICS marketing team. And then we would be working with Jason would be working directly with our senior project manager out of Park Rapids, and then our general site soup, and then the remaining would be to be determined as the project would get closer.
So again, pretty much all northern-based Minnesota teams, you know, we're 2 hours from East Grand Forks. We're working up here every day, working on Goodrich, finishing up Red Lake County, working on Monoman. We just wrapped up Grand Forks, so, you know, our team is local and working up here, so.
Well, that alludes perfectly to our experience in northern Minnesota. That's right. We working all across Minnesota. There's 140 K through 12 districts within Minnesota that we worked through the last, I think it's a decade. I mean, like you said, we just had wrapped up Red Lake County Central. Goodrich is bidding out, and we're starting that actually this summer. We have Monoman going on in process. So it's been good. And East Grand Forks, we've mentioned before, the 2021, and all the other ones. We're working on with Badger and other local schools, Nevis and referendum planning currently. So in this area. We threw together just an election timeline, and I know we went through the slide, so we grabbed the months that we be most efficient with. So we just kind of wanted to show how quick or how fast the process starting with election day. So for a November election, you're looking at, you know, getting a review and comment in by almost July 1st. So that's a month and a half away. So looking forward to like a February, you're looking at October, early to mid-October. April, we're looking at December 1st, and then the next year's election at November 26th will be back to your July date. So it's that 4 to 5 months to have the board decision and then all the design and scope wrapped all together into the review and comment process into Minnesota Department of Education. So the next slide, I have a little more detail. I just put it together an anticipated time if it was a referendum in 2026 in April. So you'd cap off starting this summer, you do, you know, 2 months worth of the first assessment in the planning portion. So phase 1. And that would work through the summer, and you begin now your solutioning at the tail end of that, but probably working on it during. So that's kind of the next 2 to 3 months getting towards that October deadline to get that review and comment in. And then the communications for referendum would start from there through to December, sorry, to be working through December, but you're starting this summer, working through December to get towards that goal of an April referendum. That makes sense.
So what does this process cost the district? So to go through phases 1 through 3, it's really about going through all the assessments, going through solutioning, getting you all the way up to a board decision, whether that's board approved project, whether that's referendum, whether that's let's just get our LTFM plan all buttoned up and put together, is $16,250. If the board decides to do a future project based on that study, that $16,250 will be credited back to the district. So the assessment phase is no cost. Phase 4, referendum communications. Again, if the district were to move forward with a referendum, would be $10,000. And then phase 5, implementation of a project would be negotiated based on the scope and duration of the identified project. So. Questions on that? I got one. Okay. Okay, last piece of propaganda, then we'll get to your question. So why ICS? We've worked with your district. We know your district. We're excited to be back here with you. We have the tools and the knowledge to help school districts. As I said, we're a number of retired or not retired. We have retired educators, but we've all worked in K-12 at some point in our lives. Dedicated to northern Minnesota schools. I've spent my last 11 years working right up in this region and want to continue to do so. Funding. You know, Blair talked about the different funding sources that schools have available to them. We've typically taken that even further in helping schools to find creative funding solutions, whether that's sales tax exemption. We worked with Red Lake County Central to get about $500,000 in sales tax exemption on their project. Using the IRA, using utility rebates, and just getting creative. You know, you guys talked about funding as one of your challenges. How do we best utilize the resources that we have available? And how do we find other ones? We know how to involve the community, whether it's these listening sessions or thought exchange. And I think that's one of the most important things of any process is involving community and communicating with that community. 2.4 billion in referendum across the state. And lastly, we care. You know, again, we work in K-12. We've come from K-12. It's one of our values is we care, and we really do work hard to help school districts. So, a couple months ago, I was down at the legislative office, both Senate and House, testifying for roof funding for school districts. So, you know, trying to go above and beyond to help give back to you folks. That's it.
The one just for the board, I had heard that similar, I've not worked with these guys a lot, and I've worked with ICS on the other side with the special ed, cooperative, which is hopefully ground being broken and running because we're in a long process as well. It's great as far as their support, but I guess my question was, as far as like the facility assessment, the first part, you know, and I know you had kind of a map there, what is, you know, kind of for in-depth to get rolled, what is your recommendation on timeline? Sitting where we're at right now, you know, I'm just being honest with you, you know, we're in May, it's kind of a tough time to start trying to things. We haven't talked about, we will when we're done with the two, you know, the next step of when we want to pick a group and figure out, but I'm just being honest because I mean, it's something that came to me kind of last week going, if you want to talk with staff, you want to talk with students, you know, kind of a bad time right now. You know, not to say, you know, a lot can't be done, you know, as far as the facility piece, obviously, the summer's a great time, you know, to see certain things, you know, get in and do the, you will, you know, dig in and that type of thing. But I mean, is it realistic to get it done in the next 2 months? And that's what I'm getting at is, you know, study of the structure itself and some of that, but I'm a little bit on, you know, the educational, you know, adequacy or the, just throwing it out.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely gonna be tough. I mean, once teachers hit that door, we're not gonna be able to get them back probably until the fall, right? You know, I don't know how your contract works, if we can get them to come in, I'm not positive on that, but I think there's some things that we can do over the summer to gain some education and some progress using whether it's thought exchange or surveys or some of those pieces, just to get some high level feedback from them, just to educate ourselves and you as a board to kind of steer us in the right direction. And then maybe hit them as soon as they come back, you know, with that back to school sessions and do the full blown listening session with them at that point. That's completely dependent on the timeline and the needs of the district. You know, Blair talked about the referendum timeline. Obviously, that's a factor into that. You know, again, not saying that that's the path that you folks are on, but it comes into play. So. Other questions?
Do you, and maybe you had this in your slides, do you have a list of references that we could call?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I can send you some, or I would say that this list right here is a pretty darn good,
okay,
all kind of your neighbors
okay.
from up here.
And then your project team was also on there, weren't they? Team
Yes.
members? Okay,
Yep. Yep, so right now I got Justin and Nate Hendrickson. You want to dig deeper into, you know, the team itself? Is that what you're asking?
I'll take a look at it.
Okay,
And then I can contact Kevin if I need to
yeah,
ask anything further.
yep, happy to answer any questions.
Okay,
After this, I mean.
sure.
Other things. And I apologize, we will get this out.
No, that's perfect, and
You're
I
fine.
mean,
See it a little bit
Yep.
better.
Yep,
I guess the one thing that I would say, the one comment I have is timeline, obviously, you know, the budget part of it is but we want to make sure we do it right. So, I mean, if we have to push that timeline, I'm okay pushing that to make sure that we get everything that, not necessarily everything we want, but probably everything that we need.
I would agree. I don't want to rush anything,
Yeah.
whether it's board approved or referendum approved. If you push it, we're gonna be pushing that ball uphill for a long time. So,
Rushing a referendum doesn't sound like a good idea.
no,
No.
never is.
And making sure everyone in the community has the information.
Yep.
And the correct information.
And that's the hardest part in our world. You know, one thing that we really lean on, whether it's listening sessions or other piece of the process, is making sure that you folks are reaching out, getting people to come in. You know, a lot of times if we're having a listening session, want each one of you to make sure that you get 10 people at this particular session so that we can get some attendance. You know, we've done other creative things. One district, we brought in the National Guard bouncy house, and the National Honor Society kind of were the babysitters of the bouncy house, and there was a meal served, and we got a great turnout for something like that. So obviously that comes at a cost, but it was great information and a good diverse group of community members. So. By all means, they will get the stuff to me. I will get it out to you. If there's any questions thought about, and I'll be honest, we haven't talked, I'll let you guys know what we decide, if we're gonna meet sometime in the near future, if we're gonna wait, because we don't plan on meeting in 2 weeks for a regular meeting, if we're gonna wait a month and make, you know, we'll figure that out, towards the end, maybe tonight, if we can, and like I say, but if anyone thinks of questions, because that's what happens, is, you know, someone walks out and you go, oh geez, I should have asked that, you know, by all means, email, I'll send it, and I'll send out to the whole group, you know, type deal, whatever the reply is, and whatever, you know, the question was. That makes sense. Perfect. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about for the gonna interview for social studies.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Special meeting.
to have a meeting, you mean? Yeah.
Just let us. We can
We do a morning meeting.
do a special meeting.
We do a morning meeting.
We can do a morning meeting too.
Absolutely.
We didn't need it. We need it, we need it.
Right. Or we can move the June meeting up. And do it like June 2nd instead of 9th,
Right.
because the 9th is my birthday.
I see what you did there.
See what I did?
I see what you did there. Well, make us some time too, unless if they have somebody, then yeah, we'll. I mean, it's just.
Oof.
That's a win.
Yeah. Not much left in the fields. Wind is howling like that.
I know, I kept thinking it was thundering today.
It was hazy.
Is that
It's hazy from all the dirt.
Brooks played at alternative keeper?
Computer to present, or, so. Jason,
Brought him there.
get it
Stopped by
hooked up,
yesterday
get
on
it
the way
hooked up,
home
and
and played
then
18 holes there. So he had experience playing the course in crappy conditions.
I was thinking that when I was driving here in the past. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
how do you serve? Like.
Yeah.
Oh, he couldn't get anywhere. Thought you were ahead, huh? Yeah, really.
Lindsay, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Hey, Josh. Good.
I'm in. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you. Unless you want to carry it around like Jim Carrey, the price is right.
Well, while we're waiting for this, I was, looking at Grand Forks, and it was 97 here. And I'm like, my gosh, in the cities, it's like 10 years cooler. So I went looking, Houston was 83.
Really?
Miami was 82, so I'm like, it's gotta be warmer somewhere. So I went and looked at the Death Valley, 98.
Oh.
We win.
Well, that's right. It's just like, we got Grand Forks. The snowbird-
Ridiculous.
You move the mic.
And Rob, I'll start it.
We did, okay.
Yeah.
So that,
So you're ready to go.
okay,
Ready, set, go?
sorry, yes.
No,
sir.
no, you're good. You're good. Board, second presentation of the night is Nexus. I know Rob brought some stuff around and introduced himself, with Nexus. I think I've told you before, Nexus was the one that iFalls worked with. Again, did the same process, had three or four companies, I don't remember, come in and do presentations, and that's who they selected. That's my experience. Rob was one of the 4 groups that presented. I'll just be honest, or put a bid in prior. The tough part with the first go around before the grant went away was they were a little late to actually put the proposal in. He's been back. He'll probably talk about and visited with some of the staff. Again, that was their choice. He was the only group that came through and actually walked through the facilities earlier and looked at them. So that being said, thank you for coming. The one thing we haven't talked about is after. We're not making any decision tonight, but we haven't talked about whether we don't have another meeting for a month. We didn't think about that, whether we're gonna, wait and use that time or whether they'll make, set a meeting and do something earlier. So I will, when we're said and done, in the near future, let you know what the plan is.
Great.
So, perfect. That being said, Rob Brown, school board.
Perfect. Hello, school board. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come tonight. For what it's worth, I'm a recently retired school board member myself, 3 terms in Hudson, Wisconsin. I loved the opportunity to be on school board. The greatest part of being on school board, in my opinion, was watching the students come present, just watching them be successful. By far, that was my favorite thing. Flip side of that, though, I also know that you guys are accountable to your taxpayers. You guys are responsible for Kevin. You guys are responsible for budget. You're responsible for policy. And tonight, through that view, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with your administrative team. You'll see this first page, just the common themes of the takeaways from basically all the conversations I had over 3 days, including some additional time with Kevin, some of the things that came away, and you'll find that my presentation here is a summary of that. And so goals and objectives based on what I think I've heard. My understanding is that, with your community, they are conservative, they're fiscally responsible, they look at their checkbooks, but they are supportive of your school. If you look at your history, even the last referendum passed, maybe not by much, but there's support. You also have a large agricultural component, just over almost 31% of your school district is considered ag per the state of Minnesota. And so all that is important. Some of the critical points that I've learned in conversations, your student population is near its highs comparatively over the last several years, which is not typical. Over the last handful of years, especially since COVID, we've seen birth rates drop, and people are wondering, where are these kids going? They're simply just not being born for whatever reason. So you are all very, very fortunate. Also, your SPED population is extremely high. Comparatively, the state average just a few years ago was about 12%. it's gone up to about 14%. You now are just over 30% in your school district. 30%, 584 of your kids are considered special needs of the 1,934 students. And so what does that mean? Well, from a long-term planning perspective, I'll get into that a little bit more, as well as some of the conversations that I've had. Great thing, back in 98, well, the reason it came was not good, but the fact that you have 3 newer buildings that were dedicated in 98 is good. There are school districts like in the Falls where they had buildings that were from the 60s they were struggling with. The challenge you have, though, is that all 3 buildings are aging at the exact same time. And so from a budget standpoint, especially when you're looking at just raises, you're looking at benefits, 75, 80% of your budget is people. And so when you look at how do we invest in our facilities, especially when 3 are aging at the same time, you know, I forget what it is. It's like 400,000 something square feet. How do you manage that? This building is about 220,000 square feet, if I remember correctly. And so that also likely weighs heavily on you. And we'll talk more about these items in a second. Some of the goals that I've heard from the team. Ultimately, whatever happens, you need to have your community support, whatever happens. If the only time a school district talks to their public is when they want something, they want investment, you typically fail. And so how do we go about bringing that communication along? How do we bring them into the fold, if you will? So it's a community-driven plan. And I'll show you another slide here in a second, but you have preschool as a challenge. You also have special education as a challenge. You have your facilities, which Ron, by the way, is fantastic. For you guys to have gotten him from Fargo, absolutely fantastic. But at some point, he's going to retire. And so what does that planning look like? And so when we talk about your funding, it's how do we do best by your taxpayers while at the same time being cognizant that they're paying the taxes. And so we'll talk more about that in a second. So this image is your high school. That was a postcard back in 1912. And I'm like, how cool is that? 1912. Could you imagine if they tried to build that today, how much that would cost? Crazy, absolutely crazy. But what I want to do is talk a little bit about go through the commercial quickly, because I know I don't have a ton of time, and just explain a little bit about who we are. And so Nexus Solutions, we are a professional services company. We do architecture, all engineering, construction management. We do commissioning, as well as retro commissioning, and then long-term management. I know the last firm you talked to historically has done LTFM planning with you. I'm looking forward to talking to you about a little bit different way of that approach, if you'll bear with me. Ultimately, single source accountability is the buck stops with us. Something that's unique to Nexus is that if we were fortunate enough to work with you, if we go to bid and it's over budget for some reason, we redesign on our own dime. Our change order rate is less than 1%. That begs the question why, and I'll get to that in a little bit. And so we also have, as far as applications, if you don't mind, if you can go to the second slide and look on the back, it's basically a list of all the clients we have. What you'll see in the upper left corner, well, in International Falls is pointing up, it's just there wasn't enough room to show it. But ultimately, UND is also a client. And so we have an office in Fargo. Is anybody here familiar with the Drecker Brewing Company? If you want a field trip. But ultimately, our office is right near there. We're happy to show you that if you like, but we're entering the new North Dakota market. We've spent a ton of time in Minnesota and Wisconsin. All we do is K-12. We do not do city, county government. We do not do hospitals. We do very, very little higher ed, and that's only on request. Why is that? Because K-12, there are such nuances to education capacity, looking at enrollment, special education. You can't just have a group of 8, 9 people focusing on K-12. You have to have an entire organization. Our organization right now is about 80 people, focusing on all aspects that I've talked to you about, but also what are those legislative matters that are important to you. For instance, LTFM, if they're fortunate with this legislative session,
that will also include the opportunity to do roofing, as an example. And so there are things like that that we're tracking that we will ultimately roll into whatever it is that we're talking about related to long-term planning. Okay, single source of accountability. If anything happens, it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility. So if there's one throat to choke, it's mine. But also, and I found this on Amazon, this Good Job Rob, the one back to pat. We hope that we're patting backs at the end of whatever the future holds for us. And also keep in mind, I'm not looking at a one and done. Like International Falls, like all of our other clients, my hope is to continue to earn a seat at the table so that every single time you do your LTFM planning, my team can be a part of it. It's not just have Ron talk to the facilities committee and talk through what he found. It's elaborate conversations on the 10-year plan that we have. This becomes a living document. This is International Falls. I'll share it with you in a second. And then year in, year out, how do we go about updating that? And not just have Nexus just simply put it into the Minnesota Department of Education format and just send it in. It's legitimate proactive conversations year in, year out. What do you want to look like from a deferred maintenance standpoint, capital maintenance standpoint, but also academics. Also academics. Part of that will go to the state from an LTFM standpoint. The other part will be a continued conversation with the board, facility committee, of course, always the administration, but ultimately your public as well, if you allow me to do so. Again, this is what you just saw. I'm proud of the work that we're doing at UND. I'm happy to answer questions if you like on that, but for the sake of discussion. Program manager at risk, what does that mean? It means that we believe enough in our relationship that we work at risk until there's funding for any kind of project. And so whether that's referendum or not, whether that's LTFM or some other source of funding, we work, we pay the bills. Doesn't mean that there's ultimately not a bill to cover those expenses, but we believe in full transparency. And so whatever we do, whether it's community engagement, engineering, architecture, other resources, we're not going to hit your fund one. We're not going to ask you to come up with stuff. Community engagement, surveying, as a for instance, we will touch every residential mailbox in your community as many times as is necessary to make sure we have the right information. The school district doesn't pay for that until ultimately there's a project. And we will show you full transparency, what all that is. The thing that you'll see here, maybe you can't see it because it's small.
Can we share, there's some questions. Can you email the slides?
Sure. Yeah. You guys, well, I'm hoping you can read this, if not. But the bottom is every single column, it ends with communication. But I also share with you that it starts with communication every step of the way. And so during the planning phase, budgeting and communications internally and externally. During the design work, when we look for design subcommittees, we look for those folks that might have interest. As an example, Career Tech Ed, we may have an opportunity, and I'm just learning your district somewhere, whether it's at the middle school or even at the high school, to do something. And if in fact that happens, maybe local business has an interest in participating. Something else you don't have, given 31% is ag, you don't have an ag program. And so what if you decided you wanted to have an ag program? What does that look like? We can invite farmers and other folks that live in that industry to help participate because they're the ones that are going to be providing jobs, as an example. All right, so what is different here? Well, you see on the left, that's a typical school roof. Historically, from an engineering perspective, it's always more cost effective for the designer to simply go straight up. But what does that do to the roof? It creates penetrations, it's heat loss. When you roof it again later on, it's that much more expensive to do that kind of roof. What you see on the right is a Nexus Solutions facility where we intentionally work through all the mechanical and all the electrical work so that we have very few penetrations. The new school on the right was built back in 2001 in Elk River. That was the first elementary school that was actually built as a two-story elementary school in the state ever. And why is that? Because it's, from a footprint perspective, it's far more cost effective, as you know, in a two-story house to go up than it is to build out. And so by providing state-of-the-art systems, not just, you know, the cheapest available, we were able to create that facility and actually save them back in 2001, $500,000 on their budget. All right.
First two-story school, something's not right.
For elementary school.
Oh, for elementary,
Yeah. Because I mean, most communities, when, you know, the old high school becomes the elementary school or the middle school, it's like an inherited thing, hand-me-downs. In Elk River, this was the first brand-new elementary school that was two-story.
I just heard.
You're like, there's three-story buildings, come on. All right, 10-year planning. And so I'm gonna take you through a couple quick slides. My promise to you is that we will maximize the use of every existing square foot that you have before I would ever recommend an addition. And you'll find as we get into your schools, and I have some slides to share with you, you have a lot of space that isn't, in conversations with your principals, that isn't as well used as perhaps it could be. And we'll talk more about that in a second. This is a typical school floor. You'll see the library with the stacks and some desks, some of the workrooms, and then the classrooms, you know, in order. First step that we always pursue is flexible furniture. What I've heard from almost every administrator is, how do we make each classroom more functional, more flexible? And flexible furniture is a great way of doing that. I'm not here to spend your money. My job as a consultant is to provide options. Another commitment I'll make to you is that we will always, for the problems you have, provide good, better, best options, and then provide the pros and cons of each option. Ink is very cheap, but in order to talk about budgets and ultimately to talk about what the pros and cons are of each solution, provides a lot of flexibility to the administration, to the board, and frankly, your community. And this happens way before we, you know, put any kind of shovel in the ground. All right. Building elements. What we see here are the addition of some barn doors. You'll see that in the library, the stacks are gone because, believe it or not, 60% of all titles in any library, generally speaking, haven't been checked out in the last year. And so what does that mean? Well, we have a lot of space potentially to do some pretty neat things if you so choose, and you also know that in your middle school, your two elementary schools, they have some classrooms that have those folding doors, those accordion doors, or walls rather. Well, there's some noise issues. Is it Jill here?
She just left.
Oh. Well, long and the short, she was talking about seventh grade and how we have 3 of those classrooms that are preschool. And she has some seventh grade over there, and when they're testing, they have to somehow coordinate with one of those classrooms because it shares one of those movable walls. The best thing we could do, if we're not going to team teach, is to make those walls permanent, make those walls structurally sound and a lot more quiet. That'll help from an educational standpoint, just as an example. And so here with this example, certainly we can talk about team teaching and how you want to use your space. But before we talk about additions and anything else, we simply talk about what makes the most sense and what are your goals, and then work together. All right, the last piece would be reconfiguration, all within the existing same footprint. You see the library, that wall now is partially glass, but mostly gone. You see that center classroom has become more small group, and then some breakout space between the 2 classrooms. And again, as long as you have the footprint and we don't touch load-bearing walls, we can do a lot of really neat things. And the interesting thing you have in your school district with the 3 buildings that I mentioned, the middle school and the 2 elementary, is that you have all sorts of flexibility. The other thing that I've heard in conversations, and you see this in the summary, is, you know, when your K2 building ultimately moves some of that larger class, those classes up to south, that's going to create some additional challenge. Something else that's notable is that in '98, when those 3 buildings were built, they took into consideration maybe 12% special education. Now you're at 30%. And so now you have larger classes, potentially 6, 7 sections again, and that's what the building was built for. But from a special education standpoint, you're running out of space. And and any principal that you talk to here, they will tell you that they make do with the space that they can find. And so you have special education here, special education here. And so ultimately that adds people resources that you really don't want to have to spend the money on. So we'll talk more about that in a second. So depending on your need, what it does is it creates spaces that are more specific to the type of education. So programming wise, let's say special education becomes more of a desired outcome, then instead of having multiple special ed rooms all over the place, we would want to consolidate those classrooms, small rooms, so that we can do the things that we need to do, but then larger rooms when it makes sense. And at the same time, we're able to potentially use or have a need for as many paras because they're consolidated and we're able to help more kids, potentially. And so, yeah, so long and short is with this exact same square footage, like at your middle school, like at your two elementary schools, you're able to do more with what you have. Any other questions? I'm really zipping through this. Okay. All right. And so here, this came from the Department of Education. As far as your standards in math, reading, science over time, you know, I believe this is a challenge for you. However, what I would mention is that, well, a couple things. One, 30% of your population is special needs. They're special needs. Most everybody has to take this test. And so how does this play into better results? Space. How are we allocating the space? What are we doing to maximize what we have? And again, I'm not telling you to spend any money, but what I'm saying is with an intentional 10-year plan where we're talking about programming and goals for the programming, which incorporates space. It's not just people, it's not just curriculum. It's what does the space need to look like? I believe we can do better. Furthermore, you likely have, given that you have such an ag community, probably a large number of students that maybe English is not their first language. That's another opportunity from a facility standpoint where we may be able to do better and help this. Okay, graduation rate. Honestly, this is something that I believe, given all the other districts I work with, something that you should be proud of. And so when we talk about the intentionality of providing students, and I was talking to Soraya and some of the other administrators, the intentionality around how do we make them career ready? How do we make them lifelong learners? Because you're already here, we have opportunities to do more so that they are engaged. When I was here just a couple weeks ago, you had just lost a student at the high school who was apparently fantastic at building motors. They just didn't find themselves in the school. And I believe that with that intentionality and again, some focus on that planning, we'll be able to do more, do different, and make education more intentional for every student. All right, so this is the meat of the presentation. In the middle, you see the 10-year plan, and this is a monitor, so I can't use my laser on it, it won't show up. But ultimately, starting at the top, that based on everybody I've talked to, the preschool space, talking to Diane, she was very helpful, gave me some of her planning and some other goals and some other information. So thank you for that. You have opportunities, and from a good, better, best standpoint, my intent would be to not tell you this is our simple recommendation. It's you have 3 schools where potentially you could do something at, and you have another opportunity to create a standalone space. My job as a consultant would be to provide to you budgets and ultimately pros and cons of each option, and then lead a conversation through that effort. It's not for me to tell you what to do. It's not for me to tell you one option. It's here you are from a capacity standpoint, and here are the results if you do this, but here are some of the benefits. And here's the budget for this work to lead that conversation. And then once you all land on maybe 2 opportunities, perhaps we have a community task force, perhaps. And then we talk through some of those solutions as an example. So again, my job is just to lead conversation, provide the technical and budgetary background, and just, this is your community. You guys are responsible to your community, as is the administration. I'm hoping to be a partner in that work. Athletics and activities, we'll talk more about that in a second. but ultimately, congratulations again on boys hockey. How cool is that? Seriously. I'm like, and talk about community morale. I mean, the Green Wave and you guys are crushing it. I mean, that's awesome. But you also have success in other activities in athletics. You use your auditorium, as I understand it, excuse me, for community, like there's community groups that come in and also use it, as I understand it. And so the taxpayers pay for your schools. They enjoy athletics. They enjoy the activities. How do we make them want to be more part of what it is that we're doing here? And so I think there's opportunities. Career ready, future ready, we've talked about a little bit already. Flexible furniture, we've talked about a little bit. Maintenance planning. Again, my intent, if I'm fortunate enough to work with you, is to not just receive your LTFM planning and then do the paperwork for you. It's intentional visiting with you and talking through where are we at with our 10-year plan from a facility standpoint, but also from an academic standpoint. Are we making progress? Where are we thinking of investing? And a number of districts where I work, initially they suggest we're never going to go to referendum. And then they do ultimately. And when we're communicating with the public early on, 6-9 months early many times, we tell them if we're successful with this first phase, this referendum, whatever it is, isn't going to address all of our needs. If we're successful here, we likely will be coming back. Nobody, the public, you as a school board, the administration, nobody wants to be surprised, ever. And so if we're intentional about our communication and let them know, if we're successful here, we may be coming back because we have these additional needs. I have a school district in Wisconsin that they're very conservative, challenged. They said they would never go to referendum. They went to referendum in April of 23. They passed $6 million. And then in November of 24, they went back because they told them they were going to and passed $17 million. Just as an example. International Falls. When I was fortunate enough to start there after having been selected, I was told by the board and the community that 60% of their population is 55 plus. Most people are on fixed incomes. There's no way that the community is going to support. And we wound up passing, how much was it? Yeah. I mean, all in all, it was like $21 million in a community where 60% of their population was 55 plus on fixed income. And so it's that, how do we engage the community piece? Bus and parent drop-off parking, especially from an athletic standpoint, it's challenging in every school building, especially New Heights. I don't care what time of day it is, even with that extra parking that was just put in not too terribly long ago. If you have an event, you're parking blocks away, and then imagine living there. You know, and so there's certainly opportunities that we would have to talk through. You don't have an ag program. Certainly, you would have to choose to want to pursue investigating what that might look like for you. It would be my job to provide, what does this look like from a facility standpoint? How do you want to overlay this? Where would you want it? Do you want something at the middle school as well as the high school? Do you want your farmers to be involved? It's those types of conversations that we could have, and all it costs is ink. Special education, we've talked about that. You know, again, if 30% of your population, more than 30% of your population is special ed, you are running out of space. You already are 6-7 section, and you're already challenged from a special education standpoint. How do you make this work? And we have some ideas that we'll talk about. But all of this wraps into, what is a 10-year plan? If you go and look at your plan one piece by one piece by one piece, and you look at all of this stuff independently of one another, nothing will ever get done. Or maybe one thing will get done, like your preschool. But then you find out 5 years from now, you were hoping to do something different, and that's in a spot where it would have made more sense. Intentional, long-term 10-year planning, that's a living document. If I'm fortunate enough to be your partner, year in, year out, we will go back and talk about what are your goals, what's the mission, and then also communicate with your public if you allow me to do so. Okay. Okay, so any questions before I keep going? It's really warm in here, and I'm trying to be fast so you guys don't fall asleep. This facility condition assessment, again, Ron's doing a fantastic job. Likely he'll continue to be wanting to work here for the next 10, 20 years, maybe. But at some point, he likely is going to want to retire. And so what does that look like? To be able to have, again, a plan where whether Ron's here or not, and he's a fantastic leader, but whether Ron's here or not, we have something where we can pick up and continue. There's no drop off. That consistency may be important to your district. Facility condition assessment, these are all of the things that we'll be looking at. We also will look at existing systems and pull together a recommissioning assessment or a recommissioning plan. You have a lot of great stuff in this building. Question?
No.
Okay. I'm like, go ahead and ask. But you already have a lot of existing systems here, and many times what will happen is that you'll do a lot of work in a certain section. Maybe like the 2017 work that was done here, there was some work done, but Brian, we didn't touch everything in this building, is that right? Or did we?
No, not everything.
Not everything. Thank you. And so the things that were touched are newer and they were commissioned, but if we didn't touch the rest of it, it's still on its old programming. It's just, maybe it's not working so great. With this recommissioning, what we'll do is we'll go through the entire building regardless of age and make sure that every sensor, every peripheral, everything that moves and its programming is the way it should be based on current standards so that your whole building is working. You don't have to worry about gremlins. I mean, I'm sure there's not a classroom in here that gets too hot or too cold or whatever. I'm just guessing. But ultimately through this recommissioning, anything that we touch that's new certainly will be commissioned because it's state requirement by law. The other part is let's make sure the whole building is one working singularity, if you will, from an operations standpoint. All right, educational adequacy. The first part was Ron. The second part is everything that relates to education. And so looking at what are your goals? I understand you have a strategic plan. Maybe it's getting a little long in the tooth.
It's actually getting very new here very soon.
Well,
Hopefully.
then you have a brand new strategic plan. So we'll lean on that because ultimately that will be the cornerstone of what your public expects. Here's your strategic plan. Hopefully your public participates a little bit and they bless it, whatever the case is. And ultimately, from an educational standpoint, we will bounce off whatever those pillars are and make sure that we're working towards education and other components where it makes sense. All right, so here is the high school. And I wish this were a white thing so I could use my laser, but ultimately, here's your high school. Brian, thank you for this. All the red, that's currently your special education. And up in room, it's at 102. I think 102 is not just a box, right? 102 is sort of longer.
Yep, it's all the way to the end on that one side.
Yep, and so that's actually nice space. When we talk about a special education suite, that type of concept is generally what we're talking about. You're able to use paras, your other teachers in a close-up space, so not spread all over the place. You also have in the library, in that old computer lab and 124, other spaces for, and I'm not sure their purpose, but if students were to melt down, they don't have to walk through the entire building to get to the suite. They have an opportunity to melt down closer to wherever they are. From an education standpoint, when you have special education kids, especially at over 30%, you want those nearby meltdown rooms. They don't have to be big, but those nearby meltdown rooms, and then ultimately your suite can be centralized. And then your STEM lab, which is 222, right, Brian?
Yep.
And so that is a fantastic space, absolutely fantastic space. In the fall, it's used more than it is in the spring. And I understand that you had a teacher once upon a time that was very much engaged in that space, and they've since retired, moved on, whatever the case might be. And so how do we take advantage of that space and proactively plan to do more or different with it because you have the space? What does that look like? And then from a facility standpoint, we can talk through, does anything need to change? Maybe not, but at least we're having the conversation. We don't have to spend money to have a conversation, and that's part of the planning. What do you want that 222 to be? What courses do you want in it? With Chad retiring and then coming back, which is a godsend because he's going to help with the trades, helping kids find career work, right? Which is awesome. I mean, and just talking to him when I was here, like, he's ready. He's like, I'm looking forward to this. It's gonna be awesome. But that said, how does he fit into that? just from a planning standpoint. Okay. All right, here is the middle school. This is a bit of an eye chart. Jill was kind enough to take her floor plan, draft it up. I will share this with you guys. And thank God it's on Zoom, so hopefully you can actually see it. But ultimately, we'll start on the left. You see the preschool, that's in that black box. That's 3 7th grade classrooms. You guys know this, but just from a space standpoint, preschool needs to change. You have the blue boxes. You have 7 science classrooms in the middle school. You have, in each grade typically is 7 sections, 6, 7 sections. And so was it intended originally where all kids in a grade would take science all at the same time? Probably not. And one of your science classrooms is actually being used for geography right now. And so the nice thing about science classrooms is that they're big, so they have a lot of flexibility. You can do a lot of cool things with them, but a lot of that space is misused space that can be used differently. Let's see here. You see the black on the far right, career tech ed, and then currently that storage space, that also the preschool where they eat their lunch. Well, career tech ed, if you can see the note, it just says inadequate, need upgrades, awkward layout. And so, and again, you have a great footprint, but how do we make it different, make it better, make it more usable, especially from a storage standpoint? There was a conversation on just wood storage. And so if you're storing wood and it's outside, typically you have to wait for it to acclimate to the inside before you do anything with it. Day 2. And so they're doing their best with what they have, but and storage is just one example of many. Where the preschool and the storage currently is, just first blush, that would be a fantastic sped suite. Why is that? Because everything around it, generally speaking, is quiet. You've got storage, you've got mechanical, you've got storage mechanical, CTE, however, but you've got some of the office storage, whatever, up near that space. That's just screaming to be something different, something better, ultimately. And again, forgive me, I only have a couple hours in the building. This is me just guessing. But at the end of the day, you have tons of opportunity. Let's see here. Let's see here, the yellow, generally speaking, are just spaces that are just misused. And so you have the stage. They currently, I mean, they have some use, but that's a lot of square footage that maybe it could be something different. The 2 rooms below it are rooms that are for exposition, basically showing off artwork, showing off things. And they're just odd shaped rooms that really don't have any purpose other than storage. And so that's additional square footage. Some of the white rooms that are noted on here, those are rooms per Jill that really don't have any great purpose currently today. So why is that big yellow box in there? Well, ultimately that's your library, and you have a lot of rooms that are off to the side. If 60% of your titles aren't read on a regular basis, that leaves a wonderful opportunity to add makerspace. And we've done that all over the place as it relates to libraries, and it's a cost-effective way of making better use of that room that otherwise is not used very often. Okay. Let's see here. And so you'll also see this oval. I don't know if you can see my cursor. It's not really moving that quick, but the oval here between the office and the exterior. From a safe and secure entry standpoint, this is challenging. And when I talk to your principals, when you came into the high school, if you come in during the day, you know, you buzz in, you go into the high school office, you check in, state your business, and then you're able to go into the school. Your middle school, your 2 elementary schools do not have that. Somebody gets buzzed in, they go wherever they want. And for your principals, that's a concern. And again, I'm not here to spend your money. I'm simply making you aware of just things that I've noticed. And if, by the way, we were to move the office to near those perimeter doors, and there are ways of doing it, that whole office space, and not all of it, but some of it, then becomes available for other things. Again, if you're right now at 6 or 7 sections already, anticipating when they were built around 12% sped, and now you're 30, special education kids require a lot more space than your typical, your typical student. So how do we manage this? Again, this is just one idea with the middle school. And so here's south and north. Again, they're mirrors of each other. And so just for the sake of discussion, but when we look at south, we see the library in the middle, that's got the circle. Again, wonderful opportunity with all the breakout space that's there to be something different, perhaps. Don't know what it is, but there's opportunities. The rooms that are squiggled in yellow that have black boxes around them, those are rooms that really don't have a terribly great purpose. They're currently special education, or they're just space. We have title, ELL, some special education, some preschool. We have an opportunity to free up those spaces. Melissa's idea was to, from a stage standpoint, maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe, it's currently used for DAP gym, special education gym. Is there another spot for that? Free up that space. Again, just an idea. We also have here the office and the safe and secure entry issue again, for both the new and south. And so again, there are opportunities here as well. So I'm really jumping through this quick, but what questions do you have? I hope that your takeaway with this conversation is you have the space that you need, and you have certainly challenges, but through planning, there's an opportunity to do a lot of great things cost effectively for your taxpayer. Athletics. Here's a couple of photos, that I was able to get from your AD. 2 on the left, of course, are the tennis courts. 2 in the middle are track. Those are likely more immediate needs. On the top, we see softball, and a challenge that we have there is simply safety. If somebody hits a foul ball, you see the tops of the backstops are not curved to catch a lot of those balls, and the backstops certainly don't go high enough to catch. And to date, you haven't had any major issues, but they're challenges. Again, I'm not telling you to spend money. I'm just making you aware of the things that I've heard from Scott. Your turf field, typical life is 10 to 12 years. I believe you've already had this conversation. You know about the turf field. And so where does that money come from? What does that planning look like as examples? All right, so from a planning standpoint, I'm going to share with you. Here's this International Falls 10-year plan. And ultimately, the back of the book shares some of the financial stuff, and that's actually a boiled down version of the overall plan, because we ultimately went to referendum. And so what you'll see with planning tools, this is a list of all the different categories. There are 22 that come from the Department of Education from Minnesota. And what we'll do is we'll go through all 4 of your buildings and others if you so choose, and we'll provide, a qualifier on each of them, letting you know, are you at standard? Yellow is 5%, between good and 5% of standard, and red is anything beyond 5%. And so you'll have this. The nice thing about this table is that it provides just anybody who doesn't understand education, they can look at the snake and see, is it red, is it yellow, is it green? It's a pretty quick read. My commitment to you is to work with your students, work with your staff, work with your community, if you allow me to do so. Working with students as an example, your juniors and seniors, they've been a part of your school district, many of them, since they were in kindergarten. And so they know the buildings that they've been in, and they have a pretty powerful concept of what has worked for them and what hasn't. More importantly, when they go home and they talk to their parents, this is gonna come up, that we've engaged them, and then the parents want to know what's going on. And that's all positive, all positive. We also do this type of engagement with farmers, business owners, booster clubs. I mean, you basically would tell me what are your critical groups. I'll provide some that I think make sense, but ultimately we need to be proactive and go to them and have those conversations. And those conversations make me unique. Teachers do a couple different types of teacher engagement, because teachers, of course, if 70% of your teachers live in district, in their neighborhoods, when something's happening, their neighbors are going to say, well, this is what's going on at the school. What do you think? And if they're not engaged, they're not gonna think positively of it. And so here, we'll do a survey that will go to every staff member. Anybody who has anything to do with your schools. It's not just teachers or paras. Nutrition could be everybody. And ultimately, we'll receive those their feedback back as it relates to their space. What do they think of how their space lends itself to educating and other aspects of what it is that they do. Is it warm in here or is it just me?
It's warm.
There's a,
Right, Kurt.
I mean, I was getting warm. I thought it was just me. I'm like, but also then some of the outputs from us, the staff survey, you know, we'll break them out by building, or we can break them out a variety of different ways. We'll provide you the highest overall scores, the things that people thought most positively about, and also the things that everybody thought that were most challenging. And that's just one piece of information. The other item that I do are, I have a couple of exercises that I do with staff during in-service days. And, you know, I ask them questions and they work together as teams to come up with what they think of their space and what the future might look like. Are they proud of, you know, where they teach, so on and so forth. And that leads to common basic needs, common performance needs, and delighters. Common basic needs, generally speaking, are those things that if you do a project and you don't do these things from a teacher's perspective, the project's considered a failure. Even if you do everything else that you promised, if you don't do the basic needs items, they're challenges, and all we want to do is be aware. Common performance needs, those items that will help me do more in my space as an educator. And then delighters, there is absolutely no way that anybody's going to want to do any of these things, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. And where most of them come from, the big things are typically gym teachers. They want the field house, you know, they want, yeah, it's, but oddly enough, most teachers are pretty practical. You can tell them sky's the limit, spend as much money as you want on paper. What do you think? What are typically the top two things that teachers ask for? Anybody? There's no wrong answer. Okay? Teachers, what do teachers want? Time and money? Yep, that's good, that's good. Typically, number one is natural light. Most teachers, all they want is natural light. And the second most common thing is color. I want a wall with color on it. I don't want it to be that, you know, industrial gray or stark white. Can I have green? You know. Public opinion polling, we use a third-party survey consultant. We do not survey in-house. When you survey in-house, just like statistics, you can make them look any way you want. By having a third party lead that survey effort, I don't have any control on what the results are. Every single residential mailbox will get one, and we'll have that opportunity to hear from a nice cross-section of your community without me trying to put my thumb on it, trying to make the project bigger, or lean on areas where I think maybe we want to do more. You don't want that. So the survey's third party, and every single mailbox will get one. Here's an example in the back of that book. You see phase 1, phase 2 future. We talk about the improvement by area, brief description, and that ultimately leads to a lot of specifics in that book. Utility savings, operational savings, which is what you asked for originally with that the RFQ Mike Piper was helping you with, the block grants, total budget, funding source, so on and so forth. And then we look at cash flows. You guys can't see this unless you're looking at your laptop, But at the end of the day, as we're checking stuff in and out, the idea is working with Ellers is what really might be the tax impact of doing anything by the type of fund it is. In Minnesota, the nice thing is that you have some funding mechanisms that do not create any tax impact. You have others that create tax impact, but you don't have to go to the voter, as you all know. Then you have the referendum. I find personally that if you have an operational and you go capital together, in my experience, I've not failed a referendum where there's been an operational and capital together. Why is that? Because you're able to tell it's not a story, but narrative is pretty fantastic. For instance, we're looking to invest in middle school career tech ed, and the operational piece helps fund some of those day-to-day operations, just as an example. Okay. Change order rate, some Minnesota examples, less than 1%. Typically, when you talk to folks, they will budget 5% for change orders. If you go to the Rochester School District, they budget 10%. 10% of $1 million or $10 million is a lot of money. Where does that money come from? Because you can't go to your voters and ask for more. Something happens called value engineering, which is an oxymoron. And so when you value engineer, if you've gone to referendum, or even if you haven't, you simply have had community task forces, you've been talking about, here's the 10-year plan, this is what we're looking to do. And if for some reason you don't deliver on your promises, what does that do to the school board? What does that do to the administration? By Nexus, investing as much as we do at risk, we're not asking you for Fund 1 money, and dumping it into that book, we avoid unforeseen conditions. We make sure that constructability is where it makes sense. And that is unique to Nexus. There's no one else you're going to talk to that you can talk to that has a change order rate of less than 1%, because there's no one in this area, in this very big area, that is willing to invest as much as we do at risk up front. Questions? It's gotten cooler in here all of a sudden. Good job. You're not just IT. On, watch out. Let's see here. If you don't mind, this last page is this population by age. Remember I talked about International Falls, and International Falls, 60% of their population was over 55. That is the complete opposite here. Your median age overall is 34. 34. If you look at the big bumps of population in your area, they're either parents or their kids, generally speaking. And so how do you gain their support, whether it's referendum or not? Simply by communicating with them, simply by making sure they're part of the process and that it's a community driven plan. Even if you don't work with Nexus, I hope you do. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's how do we engage our parents? How do we engage our kids? Because that messaging is what's going to carry you, period, in my opinion and in my experience. And so any questions on the common themes that I sent through the 3 days of conversations that I've had about the demographics, about our experience? I'm happy to be an open book, and Kevin, thank you. And thanks to your team for the wonderful opportunity to be here tonight. And again, I'm happy to answer questions.
Hey, Rob. So you guys just are kind of, you oversee everything, right? With Nexus, do you guys hire architects, engineers, construction, all of that?
So we have an architect on staff that helps oversee, and we also have a design team that oversees. We tend to work with local architects.
Okay.
But we do engineering in-house. We do not do civil. And we do all of our own construction management. We do our own commissioning. Like I mentioned, the surveys, that's all third party. And so really the biggest difference between me and the company just before is that I don't have more architects on staff.
Sure.
Yep, I don't know if that helps or not, but
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get a picture of how that works. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
Do you have a list of references that we could
Yeah.
call for previous projects?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And like I said, with the one prior, you know, as we leave tonight and you get out the door and, oh shoot, I should have asked that. You'll send, so they can have your presentation to at least go back and look at, and the same thing. I will, carbon copy Rob when I send it out. You know, if you want his email or if you want to, I would prefer you went through me and so we
Yep.
copied everyone, or Rob's pretty good, at least in my past, of trying to make sure all board members get the stuff. Because I think that's,
Question is,
yep. No, I think, yep, no. Thank you,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Rob.
So I guess my thought is if we could take 5 minutes, let Rob get out and then maybe have a conversation and figure out what the next steps are, and we'll go from there.
Go ahead.
You wanna have a conversation?
We'll have a conversation and then we'll adjourn. We're not in private session.
Yeah.
Not for the private session, because there's gonna be a private session.
Yeah, I just didn't know.
Yeah, he said it was occupied for so long and then it went off, so. Yes.
And the sun is on those windows too, that doesn't help.
Hey, when you come somewhere that's 98 degrees, what do you expect? Yeah. It's Wisconsin.
Oh, that's the problem. No.
Yeah. No.
Thank you very much, Rob, appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. And again, we, like, just like that.
Okay.
Happy to, what's your background? What do you do?
I'm a civil engineer.
No kidding.
Yeah, I work as a project manager out at the Grand Forks Air Force Base.
You're busy.
Yeah, yeah, we're growing. It seems like there's a lot of things coming in. They don't tell me a lot about it because it's top secret, but
Yeah.
the buzz I hear is that, yeah, we're getting bigger. We got things coming in. They don't give me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cause I.
Yep.
Okay, so 10.0 was ICS, 11.0 was Nexus, 12.0 was board member comments.
Your mic. No more presenters.
You're another person? I'll start with you, Matt.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say a few closing thoughts on the whole curriculum thing. You know, I mentioned possibly adding a board member to our curriculum committee. I just want to reiterate that I don't want to be involved, and I don't think any of us want to be involved on selecting our curriculum. I've been married to a teacher for 17 years. I know how much time and effort goes into being a teacher. I know how much they care about their curriculum and their students and how much time they put into it. I don't want teachers to think that I somehow come in here and know more than they do about it. I just feel that as a board member, that we review our budget, we review our finances, our enrollment, everything else. It's our job to approve all of this, and I feel like, you know, none of us are here just to approve it, right? We all want to make sure that everything is the way that it should be. On top of that, there's a lot of stories that have been in the news over the last 4 years, about curriculum, about, you know, Minnesota test scores, et cetera. I think there's a lot of people in the district that don't know what goes on in this school, and that, you know, a lot of those people elected me to be a school board member, and I just feel like it's part of my job just to make sure that, that I do my due diligence. And all I'm asking for, I guess, is just a chance to review the curriculum, whenever that may be, and just enough time to look at it. And, you know, we talked about some kind of a presentation. I think that would be great, and just enough time to just take an overall bird's eye view look at it.
Mhm.
So I look forward to, kind of coming up with some kind of reasonable solution for that.
No, I think, thank you, the presenters that came tonight. I mean, I think we got a lot of information. We got a lot of things we got to talk about. We got a lot of good things in planning in the future of East Grand Forks.
Nothing else to add? Amanda?
I don't think I could have said it better than Matt. That was very eloquent and exactly what I wanted to say, except for the being married to a teacher thing. But it's just, I did what he said. Thank you for saying it so nicely.
You're welcome.
I agree. It has nothing to do with the teachers. I trust them and I love the teachers and staff in our district. It's just due diligence and reviewing what I'm gonna vote yes on is all.
And I know, you know, growing up here, my kids going through school here, Sierra working here, I know a lot of the teachers here, and I have the utmost respect and a ton of trust in all of them, all of the faculty here. It has nothing to do with that.
Exactly. I just want to know what I'm saying yes to, pretty much, or no to. And I want to thank the presenters. Actually was pleasantly surprised. I had no idea what it was going to entail, so that was nice to see.
I want to thank the presenters as well. We are nearing the end of the year, so I do want to thank the teachers and the administration for all their hard work. I don't know if we'll have another meeting before the end of the school year. We'll see. We'll talk about it in a second here. So I just want to make sure to get that in. We certainly won't have a meeting probably for graduation, so that's exciting for graduation. And with that being said, when should we have our next board? Because Board of Education meeting is on June 9th. Great day. But do we want to have one? Do we
I mean-
wanna play it by ear and see if we have something to come to a meeting for?
Two things. Number one, I think you're going to get a social studies applicant that at some point, I mean, even if it's just that, it
We have
needs
to
to be a
approve it.
5-minute meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so that we can get that person locked in or, you know,
Yep.
whatever. The second piece is, and again, I apologize for not thinking about it, but at least having a response. If we're waiting until June, you know, to talk
these
about these groups,
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, we're not in a major, you know, we want to keep moving and see where the process goes. And secondly, is there anything else, you know, give it some time, think about, look, that you want more info. You know, I don't want to say, let's meet, you know, 4 days from now, you know, and all of a sudden someone has all kinds of stuff to get that we can't, you know, so it's, what is the next step? Is it part of your regular meeting? Is it something you want to have, you know, a special meeting and just deal with that conversation? Your call.
I kind of like Lynn's idea of moving it up. I feel like May is really busy, so adding another one in.
Well, what instead of having it on June 9th, what do we have it on June 2nd? The first Monday, so that we don't wait quite as long,
It's your call.
Cause we have
but yet
like
May
Memorial
is
Day.
gonna be done soon.
If we didn't do it on a Monday, we could do it another day, but otherwise we really, I mean, we're not meeting next week probably, right?
The second works for me.
Yeah, the second works.
I'm fine with that.
Me too, I think.
Okay, we'll go on the second of
free, yeah.
June
If something changes, then we need to do it
instead
a
of,
morning meeting for 5 minutes,
yeah,
whatever.
because
we
we'll
can do that
probably
too.
have 2 in June anyway, so,
Mhm.
we'll have it the second and then
The,
it's the end of the month.
okay. So now we,
So not the
Okay.
9th, move it to the second, correct, Lynn?
Yes, second instead of the 9th.
so now you need to pause to go into.
Yes, so now, I will pause the meeting, I'll gavel the meeting closed for